Today, we're diving into a really radical framework that wants to completely rewire how we approach peace. Seriously, forget what you know about traditional aid and diplomacy for a second. The material we're looking at lays out a blueprint where peace isn't just some far-off goal, it's actually a profitable business model.
And that, right there, leads us to the huge and, let's be honest, kind of shocking question at the heart of this whole thing. Can profit, the very engine of capitalism, actually be the best tool we have to create peace? It's a massive idea, so let's break down how it's all supposed to work. So the big idea is to completely shift away from the old model of just giving aid. Instead of seeing peace as just a humanitarian issue, this framework reframes it as essential investable infrastructure. Just like we invest in a power grid or a highway system. The goal is to build so much stability that attracts huge, real-world capital. And this is where we get this new term, sovereign innovation zone. The strategy is to look at areas famous for conflict and treat them like a blank slate. By changing the equation and lowering that investment risk, the hope is to pull in major global players to build new societies from the ground up using future-proof technology. It's like letting them leapfrog decades of difficult development. Okay, I know this is a lot to take in. It's a pretty complex system. So to make it all click, the sources use this fantastic analogy, comparing the whole thing to a piece of technology pretty much all of us have in our pocket right now. Yep, a smartphone. It's a really simple way to get your head around all the different layers and parts that have to work together to make this thing function. It's not about just one piece of the puzzle, it's about the whole integrated system.
So, if a new society is like a smartphone, what are the core components? Well, first, you've got the hardware. The sources point to someone like Elon Musk for building that future-proof infrastructure. We're talking autonomous transport, renewable energy, the whole shebang. Then there's the software. This is the moral and ethical operating system, which the sources called PCRMI. It's described as a framework for trust and accountability. And finally, you need a power source, and that's the peace-for-profit economic model itself, the engine that keeps the entire system running.
Okay, so that's the blueprint. You've got your hardware and your software. But what makes it actually run? And more importantly, how does it keep itself going without just falling apart? Well, the answer, according to this, is a self-reinforcing economic engine. It's called the peace-for-profit flywheel. It all starts with moral legitimacy that builds trust and lowers the risk for investors. That, in turn, attracts massive investment from global partners. This investment then creates real local prosperity, where high-margin stability becomes way more appealing than low-margin chaos. And finally, those profits get reinvested right back into the community, making it stronger and more self-sufficient, which of course reinforces that initial trust. And the wheel just keeps on spinning, getting stronger each time. Now, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds great on paper, very theoretical, but is any of it actually real? Well, the framework is apparently grounded in some tangible, real-world projects that are designed to prove the concept can actually work.
The whole thing really hinges on this one incredibly simple principle. It's all about creating what's called a stakeholder class, basically a population where people's personal income, their livelihood, is directly connected to this new, stable, high-tech infrastructure. Because if your job depends on the system working, you have a really powerful reason to protect it. And this really shows you the core shift in thinking. The traditional aid model, the argument goes, can create dependency and a fragile, low-margin kind of stability. This new model aims to create stakeholders, which generates a much more robust, high-margin stability. The sources point to examples like a proposed economic free zone on the Golan Heights, which would integrate things like wind farms and advanced agriculture to build a real, self-sustaining economy.
And check this out. The proof of concept starts with the absolute basics. There's this initiative called the Miracle Bar Challenge, which aims to produce 2 million nutritional bars every single day. The idea is brilliant. Prove that if you can solve a fundamental need like food security first, you create the solid foundation that peace and prosperity can actually be built on.
But as you can imagine, putting a vision this huge into practice requires a crazy level of optimization. I mean, we're talking about rebuilding entire societies. And that's where the sources say the power of advanced artificial intelligence comes in, specifically mentioning the kind of work done at places like xAI. So the system is called GenAI, which stands for Generative Intentional Intelligence. What does that actually mean? Well, you can basically think of it as a predictive AI engine for society. It uses something called quantum intelligence to analyze all the incredibly complex variables to find the path of least resistance, the most efficient, most successful way to get people to cooperate and grow. And the impact of this is just staggering. Get this,
The sources estimate that for a hypothetical $30 trillion project, using this kind of quantum optimization could slash the costs by $10 to $12 trillion. That's an efficiency gain so massive, it could be the difference that makes these huge, world-changing projects financially possible in the first place. But after all this talk about AI, quantum algorithms, flywheels, and future tech, the source material ends with a really important and very human reality check. Technology, no matter how powerful it gets, is not the final answer.
And this is probably the biggest takeaway of all. AI can crunch the data, it can optimize the systems, it can even point to the best solutions, but it can't replace human will. The sources are crystal clear on this. Technology is just a tool. A lasting peace depends completely on our own sustained commitment and our own ethical choices. So that leaves us with the big question at the end of it all. Is this peace for profit model a real, viable blueprint for the future of global stability, or is it an incredibly ambitious and maybe even a little bit risky techno-utopian dream? That's a great one to think on. Thanks for joining me.